mouth, knowing that with our February 8th meeting, there has been requests already, and we actually have issued some relaxations to these bans already. Through our traffic safety bylaw, like I mentioned earlier, we did have the allowance for the CAO designate to issue those. So going forward, we are going to put this a bit of a communication piece out in the, hopefully in the county corner paper, just allowing ratepayers to know that they have the opportunity to apply for this.
Councillor Penner.
Further to that, I just brought it up because I know the Ag Department is starting a new little bulletin thing out really quick too, and just to make sure that we cross over with our departments, really promoting that how easily accessible these forms are online and a few things like that. So that's a big reason why I was bringing it up too. So just to get the word out there ASAP.
Okay, no, through the chair, that's definitely something we can contribute to and inform them.
Does council have any other questions for Mr. Zier? If not, what are council's wishes? Yes. Go ahead, Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that we approve the road ban exemption policy as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the road ban exemption policy as presented. Are there any discussion to that motion? See none, call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Zier.
Thank you.
All righty, our next agenda item, tax payment plan request. Welcome, Ms. Severson, and anytime you are ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. So I have a tax payment request from our last large arrears client, so I'm quite excited about that. They've requested a tax agreement payment plan, and they have provided 2 options that they would like us to present. Option number 1 is 12 equal payments, so a 1-year payment plan for the total balance of $336,307.56, which includes 2019 and 2020 penalties, with the 2021 and 2022 penalties being waived with that proposed option. The other option that they've proposed is full payment of the levies in the total amount of $299,350.25, immediate payment of that full amount if all penalties are waived right from 2019 to 2022. For the last few years, Council has agreed to several payment plans with our industrial partners to support their cash flow issues during the economic downturn, the pandemic, and the low gas prices. There has been consistency in our agreements in that Council has only agreed to cancel penalties in the year that the company has come forward with a payment plan discussion. We began our discussions with Long Run after a long time of no returned calls or emails, and after our legal firm had forwarded them a demand letter, which we did in conjunction with several other municipalities, in late 2021. So late last year they finally contacted me. We started discussion, and they were working with all the other municipalities at the same time. And in January, late January, we were able to come to a conclusion of these 2 options that they have asked us to propose to you. You're only, as Council, only limited to the 3-year timeline that the MGA provides for a tax payment plan. Benefits discussion, Council's authorized a tax penalty bylaw that provides for penalties on the 1st of November for current taxes and on the 1st of each month thereafter for all tax arrears at a rate of 2% per month. Option number 1 that that Long Run has proposed would be consistent with all other payment plans that Council has authorized. The timeline is well within the legislation and is somewhat shorter than some of our other agreements. While option number 2 would bring immediate payment, the cancellation of an additional $36,957, which is related to the 19 and 20 penalties, would decrease county revenues overall. In addition, this option would not be consistent with the other agreements that Council has entered into with our industrial partners. The financial implications: Kneehill County budget includes an allowance for tax cancellation for situations such as these, which is where the tax penalties that we do cancel would go into. Voiding the 2022 penalties would not create a negative budget variance, since the budget for penalties has been established at a conservative level. And option number 1 provides the county with a better financial return.
Thank you.
So, there you go.
Is there any questions for Ms. Severson? Let's go ahead, Councillor McGee.
I think saying that option 1 is consistent is kind. Consistent maybe in how payment is done, in the ideal position of how some of those came forward and worked with you really well. The fact that you had to chase this so hard and make difficult, I have a real problem with that statement, and with even therefore their suggested payment. Has there been any conversation about included in those payments is the cost of that case, going to see our lawyers?
It was a pretty small amount.
Okay.
It was like less than $200. Because we shared it with several other municipalities when we sent it to the lawyer to do the demand letter, and then there was really no follow-up needed by them. So we as municipalities were able to then have the discussion directly with Long Run. So it was a pretty minor amount.
And they responded quickly after taking those measures?
They did, yeah, because they are still an operating company, and once you start to send them a demand letter, they realize that we're much more serious, and it can lead to a lot more problems with their other things that they're doing, right? So I think that it was needed, but yet, yeah, it was rather annoying that I had to do that.
Councillor Penner.
Not a question, I think, just clarification, or just an opinion from a ratepayer. And from myself, I'm all for working with them. It's been great, and I thank your department for doing that. The frustrating part is that we had to go to court to get them going. They've waited this many years to get this whole process, and our ratepayers are frustrated with this, that it took that to instigate them to get their act together and get in here and get the discussion going. So just to put a ratepayer's opinion out there, I guess.
Deputy Reeve King.
So I'm looking for clarification too. In the request for decision, it says that if we take option 1, that we are waiving 19 and 20 penalties, but also in the decision, it says that we agree to void the 2022 penalties. So we're actually voiding 21 and 22, are we not?
Correct. The
So-
21 penalties will hit the tax cancellation budget line, but the 22 penalties, if we just avoid them, it just takes them out of the penalty line in the budget. So they're kind of treated a little bit differently.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're acknowledging that we are going to, they are going to pay their 19 and 20 penalties.
Yeah.
And then we have agreed that we will not collect the 21 or potential 22 penalties that would have occurred.
Yes, if that's what your decision is, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or clarifications needed from council? Deputy Reeve King.
Once again, I just want to reaffirm our appreciation for the work that's being done to get these things nailed down and in place. And so I am thankful. This is our last big delinquent account. So I'm willing to make the motion then that we enter into a tax agreement payment plan with Long Run for the payment of tax arrears in the amount of $336,307.56 to be paid in 12 equal monthly installments. So I assume that's consistent with option 1.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us as presented on screen. Is there any discussion to that motion? I guess my question would be, so they, as of October of 2022, this year, they would be current on all taxes with this proposal?
If they pay their 2022 on time, yes, because this would not include 2022 levies.
Okay, so they would be,
So they would be, once they
Okay.
get their tax notices for this year, they'll have to make sure they pay those.
okay. All righty. Go ahead, Councillor McGee.
I'm going to sound like I'm trying to pick a fight, and because I think I am. I want some way of guaranteed that we won't have penalties waived for this company ever again. Can we have that somewhere included in how we?
Go ahead, Mr. Hogan.
You know, you can put some wording in there. If you do that, though, you are, you know, there's a number of questions that come up. Is you've got the one whether they would entertain that as an amendment to the contract. There might be other reasons in the future that a council would want to consider that as well, right? And you'd be binding them. So I don't know that you can try putting it in there. I don't know if it would be accepted or if it would stand.
I think my comment to that would be, after coming back from RMA, there seems to be quite a consensus at the government, Alberta government level, that enough is enough. They're going to stop pussyfooting around, but who knows what's going to happen there.
I can
Deputy
also,
Reeve King? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I can also add that we do have a tax penalty bylaw, and as long as that's in place, this agreement only will cover this balance and will be clear that it's the 2019 to 21 tax arrears. So your tax penalty bylaw is always going to take precedence on any future issues. So they would have to come to council again if they wanted to have any penalties reversed. So that really takes precedence on any future.
So to follow up to that, can you keep a note in your own self that for the future council that this may come forward to give this background?
Absolutely.
Deputy Reeve King.
I guess my comment would be is in the other agreements that we've made with other companies, we've never put that exemption in there. And in terms of consistency, this agreement that we have with Long Run is consistent with the others. And so unless we're going to change our tax penalty bylaw and say that we will not make those exemptions for all delinquent accounts, it's pretty hard to target just the one. And so because this is consistent with what we've done in the past, and we're not agreeing that we would give them a release from penalties in the future, nor are we saying that we wouldn't. I guess consistency in this is what we've already done. So that's where I'm sitting on this one.
Yeah, that's what I've tried to stick with as well.
Mr. Hogan.
To follow up on my comments before, I said I don't believe that would stand. That's a compliance issue with the Municipal Government Act. So even if you did put it in there, I think you've got a challengeable item there that I don't think would be defendable.
Thank you. Like I said, I know it's just more philosophy, but I needed it said. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Severson? If not, what are council's wishes? Oh. All right. We have a motion, right? We were just having discussion to that motion. All right, if there's no more discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. There are a couple more motions here. Counselor Penner.
I'd make the motion that council agrees to cancel the 2021 penalties relating to the tax roll with the roll numbers listed in the amount of $68,780.82.
All righty, we have a motion before us as printed on screen. Is there any discussion to that motion? Counselor Penner.
My discussion is that I didn't like to make that motion, but I agreed to work with these companies, and I think it's very valuable for our county.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And the motion is carried. We have another motion. All righty, Deputy Reeve King.
So I'm assuming that the penalties we're talking about in this last motion, the 2022 penalties, relate to the money that's already outstanding, correct?
Yes,
And
it would be
would
from,
have been billed in the 2022 year.
yes, January to March.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I'll make that motion that council agrees to void the 2022 penalties in the amount of $24,807.82.
Okay, we have a motion to agree to void the 2022 penalties in the amount shown. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. All righty, thank you, Ms. Severson.
Thank you, council. Hopefully I won't have to do this again.
I hope you don't have to do this ever again. All righty, next agenda item, 6.2, 2022 operating and capital budget approvals. Welcome back, Mr. McKinnon.
Good morning, council. I guess through the chair, I'd just like to present the 2022 capital budget, operating and capital budget, as council's well aware of. The budget book has received recognition by GFOA, and I, again, extend my thanks to the staff that participated in the development of that document, and not only the staff in corporate services, but the staff in totality within the organization. It's good to be recognized by your peers in the industry, and it's also good to be, for council to be recognized as a leader in the province in terms of financial stewardship and financial management of the resources for the ratepayers. That being said, the budget before you, as in previous years, meets all the statutory requirements under the MGA and follows the general principles, or exceeds in numerous cases the principles required under public sector accounting standards and best practices as it relates to municipal budgeting. Again, the budget is really two documents that are before you. The operating budget, which is for the day-to-day operations of the municipalities to maintain a road network, do snow removal, do parks maintenance, all those sort of mundane type things, but are very important for the ratepayers in terms of the services they do. And then the capital budget would be coined as the reinvestment council's making to the major assets, and those are the bridges, the road network, the water sewer networks, and the like. So those are the two big components. Council, even though this report is to deal with the adoption of the budget document has really been a constant theme since the approval of last year's budget. So council during the course of the year deals with numerous items during their regular business on an ongoing basis, month in and month out. A lot of those are referred to the budget process. So it's not like there's only been one or two meetings in regards to the financial management. There's quarterly reports that informs council's direction in terms of service delivery. There's numerous service delivery reports that council's dealt with all the way through the year that have been referred to the budget. And this document basically summarizes and encapsulates all those prior directions of council to come up with an adopted budget, which is required under the MGA. And that adopted budget must be balanced. That is, the revenue intakes must equal the expenditure flowing out. Unlike provincial and federal budgets where you can run in a deficit position for multiple ongoing years. So municipalities don't have that luxury. It must balance the budget. Council's guidelines in terms of the development of the budget have been achieved in this document that's before council today, just for regurgitating information that's already been, but for those ratepayers that didn't have the availability of reviewing the material prior, most of the accounts within the municipality have been frozen at the 2020 level of expenditures. Our budget process internally is a multi-level management review prior to even presenting a draft proposal to council. Council has had that document for probably a month now. That document's also been available to the ratepayers on our website, in addition to any supplementary materials that council has received as a result of the ongoing budget deliberations. So we're nearing the end of the budget deliberations with the adoption of the annual budget. Again, the basic summary of what's in this document is the proposed 2022 operating and capital budgets maintain the current level of services, so there are no service cuts. Council has directed an investment in the existing infrastructure, and more importantly, to plan for the future in terms of renewing that infrastructure. So these are all investments that are needed for the community to basically to operate. If we don't have a good roads network, we don't have a good park system, we don't have a good infrastructure in all the areas, it's very hard to deliver quality services to the ratepayers. And of course, like council's well aware, included in our budget are contributions to other agencies such as FCSS and the library and the like. So it's more than direct services that are provided through municipal county staff. It's also providing funding mechanisms to the broader service area delivery areas within the county as a whole. And that includes funding of recreational programs, fire services, and other communities that ratepayers of the county do benefit from. So that being said, there are and will continue to be significant external pressures that council's dealt with. There's a table, I'm not going to go through it because council's probably seen this at least 4 times in the last month. But again, not to do provincial bashing per se, but provincial policy decisions specifically with providing relief to shallow gas and the oil and gas industry in totality have resulted in significant revenue losses at the municipal level. More importantly, which was recently confirmed in the provincial budget, the county will see a $1.8 million reduction in provincial funding for infrastructure renewal. So the province has basically said we're putting more reliance on the local ratepayers to pay for the infrastructure within their own communities. So the county is dealing with a $1.8 million reduction in provincial grants. Those are the big provincial issues. There's all kinds of assessment shifts. There's all kinds of moratoriums on the collection of new revenues related to oil and gas for the next 3 years to provide further relief to the industry. So in essence, there's challenges in the last couple years. There will be continued challenges because of provincial policy in these areas over the next few years in addition. For example, the RCMP cost sharing was downloaded prior to 2021. The county did not pay for RCMP policing costs. Over the next few years, that bill would have gone from 0 to almost 500,000. So those are the pressures that council's had to deal with within this budget and ongoing budgets. There's various Appendix Cs in the adoption of the budget. There was some legal and other issues dealt with in camera, and I'll refer those to the chair, but maybe I could summarize. At the end of the day, discussion centered around the shifting of certain burdens and the planning for the future. And there are some motions that staff have for council that are appropriate to make based on the discussion of that in-camera session to ensure that adequate funding is being provided for future infrastructure needs of the county. That will amend some of the tables here, so I'll leave it up to the chair whether you wish to preview those motions to give context to the tables that are in this report, or should I just continue on?
What's council's feelings? How do you want to handle this? Go ahead, Deputy Reeve King.
I think that some of the contextual detail is important to have in an open forum because it helps then inform ratepayers as to the decision-making process that goes on. So I think we have the time, and I think we should invest the time in that conversation.
Right.
I would tend to agree. I mean, that is what we are here, is to do the financial side of the county. And the more information we could put out there, the better it would be for everyone. Okay. And we have to give credit to the provincial government for putting us in this position.
Yes, give credit where credit's due.
You bet.
Again, in the budget, if I could just summarize the segue to that discussion, all the capital investments and capital expenditures of a municipality are funded through the operating budget. So there was significant discussion on the appropriateness and the sustainability of that long-term financial strategy. Council has committed existing resources within the operating budget to the tune of $7,085,000. However, that number has been fairly stagnant over the last number of years and hasn't necessarily kept pace. We have inflation related to construction and the like. So the discussion centered around whether that amount was appropriate given the future challenge, rising cost, current levels of inflation, the overall burden of the tax rate, numerous factors that are in any budget discussion. So that being said, there was basically a desire to provide additional funding to ensure future investments in the existing infrastructure were not being depleted or maintenance and other issues were not being deferred by this current council and passing the burden on to future councils. So I'll leave it back to the chair or any other members of council who wish to provide additional commentary on that issue. But that was basically the crux of the discussion, is how do we maintain infrastructure investment and provide cash that will be needed in the future to deal with the ongoing challenges in the context of provincial downloading, shifting tax burdens between tax classes, assessment information, all those factors that impact the delivery of service within a municipality.
Any questions for Mr. McKinnon?
So in terms of, sorry, if I could, in terms of the overall aggregate of the amount of budgetary amendments that came out of those discussions is approximately $250,000. So the budget, there are motions that we have for council that would amend the various tables within this document to give effect to that increase of infrastructure funding to the tune of $250,000. That being said, I'll just recap what is in the base budget. So Appendix A is the operating budget. Currently it stands at the $27,892,000. There is a motion to increase that by $250,000, which is basically amending the property taxation line by increasing that by $250,000, but also increasing the contribution to reserves by $250,000. Included in the base funding is, again, if you look at it, compared to the aggregate budget of $221, the budget's actually down $2 million. the substantial reduction in the budget is the one-time project relating to gravel, pit digging and the like that has been completed now and has provided the county with, you know, an 8 to 12-year reserve of gravel. So that was a good investment, but that's the major reduction in the budget is the non-recurring projects. In addition to that, there has been significant savings, as I mentioned, in the base budget, unless the department's heads could justify cost increases. There's been no general inflationary allowance. Yes, there, as council's dealt with during previous deliberations on the budget, there are some significant pressures related to the cost of fuel and the cost of other goods and services, and there has been some strategies to deal with those in the budget from a cost containment perspective. This budget does continue the reduction in council salaries that were decided by council in the 221 budget. So there has those reductions in the overall compensation and remuneration of council members are continuing in this budget. Again, there are some positive stories in the terms of the economy. As the economy does increase, you will see enhanced investment returns on our investment portfolio, so that is a good offset. Again, based on that strategy of providing and ensuring the infrastructure is maintained, there is a recommended $5 increase in the monthly water bills. That would be the first increase in over 10 years in the monthly maintenance cost related to the water system. So there has been no increase in that maintenance contribution for at a minimum of 10 years. So it is $5 a month, and it will be dedicated to the maintenance of the existing infrastructure, and you know, costs are going up in all areas. So it is maybe viewed by some as a significant increase, but again, it's an increase that hasn't happened for over a 10-year period of time. So that has been built into the budget. The budget also recommends that given the billing cycles, that increase will not be effective to May 1st of this year, and the like, so it would be adjusted, but the effective rate of that increase would be May of this year. So that's basically Appendix A. There aren't any highlights unless council has specific questions in Appendix A. Again, there is an increase in taxation for sure. It's relatively modest. On a typical hamlet house, it would be roughly now $26 annually. On an acreage assessed at $300,000, it would be approximately $78 annually. And on a quarter acre of farmland, it would be roughly $46.55. Again, not significant dollar impacts for the level of service the ratepayers are receiving currently. Appendix A is basically the nuts and bolts of the budget. That is the numbers that we'll now use as the benchmark for doing our quarterly reporting to council. And those are the numbers that will be programmed into each of the department budgets, and individual managers and people that have budgetary authority would then be programming on those predicated services with those caps. There may be changes. As I mentioned, fuel prices are a concern. As we report out to council on a quarterly basis, that's the monitoring council will receive, and administration would be responding with strategies if there are anomalies that are occurring during the course of the year. Appendix B in the report outlines the proposed contributions. Well, it outlines a number of things. It outlines the provincial grants that we're receiving. So again, the MSI operating is the same number that we received basically for the last 10 years, so there has been no change in that. There has been some good news that some of the previous cuts that occurred for ASB funding have been reinstated, specifically that ASB provincial environmental funding. So that is a positive $50,000 increase, and the base funding of provincial grants in the operating has basically declined from, I would say, 10 years ago, in the $600,000 level to around $300,000. On the capital side, a more significant cut. Again, we're receiving $1.8 million less in capital dollars on an ongoing basis on the capital side, but this only deals with the operating. Previously, there's the next transfers from reserves. Council's very well aware, and was all the projects related to that. Basically, numerous projects from previous years haven't been completed because of numerous reasons. So rather than burdening the 2022 tax rate, additional monies were contributed out of the 2021 surplus, and they're being applied to finish those projects in 2022. In addition, there are contributions to reserves. You will see a motion to amend the infrastructure contribution from $600,000 to $850,000 to provide additional contributions to future investments that will be needed in the county to maintain the infrastructure in a good state of repair. So there are motions to amend that Appendix B table. Moving on to Appendix C. These are the various operating projects that are in the budget. Again, prior years, there have been significantly more operating projects. These are predominantly one-time projects in various areas. So there are some significant key investments that council is making in this budget. The road network study, $50,000 to detail what and reshape the future 5 to 10 year capital plan for the municipality as it relates to the road network. Minor things like an aerial overview. This is usually updated every 4 years, so this expenditure will be dropped in the 2023 budget and reappear 4 to 5 years in the future. Some additional technology for security related to our computer networks in terms of moving more to secure servers on a cloud-based basis rather than maintaining extensive hardware internally. There are other operating projects in terms of economic development, asset management, investments in fire training for our volunteers, and then numerous corporate initiatives that have been previously detailed in other documents or have been directed by council over the course of the last year. There still is additional monies for gravel crushing, a carryover of $290,000, but there is an additional $700,000 in the base budget. So those are the sort of special projects that are in the operating budget for the 2022 fiscal period. And as you can see, none of those are having any reliance on the tax rate in 2022. These are one-time projects, and it's been the council's philosophy to fund one-time projects from one-time revenue sources, not to burden the taxpayers with pressures in any given year. So moving on to the capital budget. The capital budget is presented into two sort of major slices. We have new projects for 2022. So these are basically projects that have not started. There may be themes that have continued from prior years, such as Ron Gore Memorial Arena. There's been numerous phases of improvements to that arena, but this would be the next phase of new improvements. The projects that are on the carry forward list, whether they actually proceed or not, the funding is previously authorized by council, and that funding will stay in place until council either cancels the project or amends the project scope. So if any of those projects do not proceed for whatever reasons in 2022, they would stay in the books, and administration will be reporting on each and every one of these projects on a quarterly basis. So there's ample opportunity for council to influence the scope for projects that have not started yet. Obviously, once a contract's awarded and outside resources have been retained, there is some legal obligations. But again, some of the projects, well, all the new projects, none of them have started, and numerous, well, not numerous, at least two of the carry forward projects, Horseshoe Canyon specifically, and the Stip Bridge of 350 have not been awarded to dates per se. So just for council's information. But, and again, for council's information, it's been our practice not to draw any money from reserves until those expenditures actually occur. So we will be cash flowing all these projects to make sure that we are getting the best bang in terms of investment returns and not earmarking money when we could be actively investing that money and getting a return from a cash flow perspective. So that's the way administratively we manage that capital envelope. So again, what isn't here, which will be coming to a council meeting later in the year, is the requirement also under the MGA. There's two fundamental requirements, well, three, depends which way you want to slice it. Council must annually adopt an operating budget, and they must adopt a capital budget. The sources of financing for those programs have to be identified in the approval document. So that's what's before you today. In addition, approximately 2 years ago, an amendment to the MGA came in that councils must adopt a plan, not a multi-year budget. So council in 221 did adopt a multi-year, 3-year operating plan that's required now under the MGA, and a 5-year capital program plan, not a budget, a plan. That plan does not have to be balanced, but it has to give some indication of potential financial exposures on the operating side for 3 years and potential capital exposures or capital investments that the council may be considering over the next 5 years. Those will be for the 2022 update to those plans will be forthcoming to council. We need to do a bit more work on the modeling, specifically on the capital side. But prior, in mid-year or before, council will be seeing those 3 and 5 year capital plans for consideration. Again, they're really, for all intents and purposes, a planning document. They do not bind council in any way. Council will be going through a strategic planning exercise and other exercises, and those exercises will inform the 3 and 5 year capital forecasts of the municipality. So it's probably prudent to defer consideration of that until those exercises that are quickly approaching dates that have already been scheduled with council, for those can be built into the document rather than doing the document twice. So that is the capital summary. In addition, in the report, there's some summary of key investments. Yes, the budget does have tax rate increase in it, but I would look at it from the investments and benefits the ratepayers will be seeing out of this budget. Bridge improvements and rehabilitations exceeding $550,000. Fire communication, continue improvements to fire communication systems of another $147,000. Gravel crushing to support our road programs, exceeding $990,000 has been provided for that. Again, in order to grade the roads, we need graders. In order to deliver water services, we need equipment. So those assets have to be replaced. There's approximately $2.4 million for those type of asset replacements to keep our fleet in a good state of repair. There's ongoing facility improvements in numerous facilities, specifically in the Ron Gore Arena. There's an additional $235,000 of investment there. Again, I mentioned there's a $1.8 million reduction in provincial funding. That is very difficult for any municipality to absorb that level of provincial cuts in 1 year. So this, even though the $1.8 million cut is happening in 2022, this budget and the next 2-year operating budgets are providing funding to recoup that funding of $1.8 million. And lastly, as I already mentioned, there is a modest increase in the financing stream for the maintenance of our water network of a $5 monthly increase that will be dedicated for maintenance of the water system. Again, the impacts per the typical household have been articulated to council, and I'd be pleased to answer any specific questions council has on this document or on the budget in totality.
Are there any questions for Mr. McKinnon? I know we've been through this a number of times, and we're getting down to the wire finally, so now's the opportunity. Deputy Reeve King.
So just more for clarification, in the capital side of the budget, where we have carry forward projects, one of the ones that we often will get questions about is the allotment of money towards Horseshoe Canyon. And I just wanted to clarify that at this point in time, there are no plans that would see expenditure of that kind of money at Horseshoe Canyon within the 2022 year. And more so, I guess it's more a preemptive strike as far as helping ratepayers understand that although that sits there as a carry forward project, that there is nothing currently that's in the plan to happen within 2022 as far as Horseshoe Canyon is concerned.
That is, through the chair, that is correct. There is outstanding issues that staff have to report on related to that project, and prior to any action of staff, we need to seek additional direction from council. So there would be no tendering of any or releasing of any of those funds until those supplementary exercises come back to council.
Deputy Reeve King.
And I guess I just want to make an additional comment to follow up on what you had said earlier about the need to balance the present day needs as well as what's going on in the future. And the things that we see as ratepayers, not just as councillors, but as ratepayers, the things that we see, of course, always are the increases in the cost of either taxation or things like the $5 fee on the water service charge. And it's important to help ratepayers as well as ourselves understand that if we're not making those necessary investments in that infrastructure with the $5 service fee increase, or we're not planning far enough forward in our future viewpoint, we will come to a point where we all of a sudden have to go, okay, we need $1 million, we don't have it anywhere, and so we have to make that ask in an immediate form in our taxation request of the year. So hopefully what we've done in our deliberations is allowed ourselves the flexibility in the future that we don't run into a wall like that. And so I just seeking that clarification again. Just, I understand it myself, but sometimes it's easier to have it said here than it is said anywhere else.
Yeah. And if I could, through the chair, that's a very valid and pertinent point. The municipality has hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in assets. No one likes to see tax increases, but no one likes to see unplanned huge spikes in any particular year. So it's prudent financial policy to plan for the long term. So that's what we try to do as a municipality, is plan for the long term. And what I mean by long term is not the 5-year horizon, the 10 to 25-year horizon. A lot of the assets we have, such as the water system, have very long lives. You know, we have relatively new assets, but we have assets that are significantly aged. So, you know, there will be life cycle needs of all these assets. Is no different than your typical household that, you know, depending on your material type, but let's look at your roof on your house. Typical replacement cycles are 20, 25 years. You've got to plan for that. So we take the approach is not to overburden current ratepayers at the expense of future ratepayers. So it's a balancing and multi-generational, basically financial plan to provide benefits and tax burden to those users that are going to use that asset. And that's a prudent municipal financial strategy that allows the necessary financial resources to be reserved, but it doesn't create huge spikes. So it's better to plan and make the plan known to the ratepayers. Here's the plan for the next 25 years. Not to say there won't be tax rate increases, but you're not going to see significant spikes in any one year that were unplanned and we didn't, council and administration didn't give you the heads up. So again, we're trying to be very proactive in that long-term planning, provide a roadmap for council, but also to provide the flexibility in any given fiscal year. Things will happen. No one expected gas prices to increase 40%. You know, those things will have to be managed as we go forward. But again, the municipalities, by their very nature, are asset enriched, and we provide services through the maintenance of our assets, whether they're the road system, the bridges, the park networks, all the, you know, it's very heavily asset-based. So the investment's been made, service levels are there. To maintain them, there has to be a financial plan other than, oh, we just bought it and we'll worry about that grader 10 years from now. Well, when a grader is $900,000 a pop, we're talking about large expenditures. So it's prudent to provide a plan that smooths the impact and provides stability, not only for the residential ratepayers, but also for the commercial ratepayers. No one likes surprises in their, if you're running your business, you don't like big surprises in any given year. It's better for everyone that we jointly plan and the message is out there for the ratepayers.
Are there any other questions from council to Mr. McKinnon? Seeing not, we do have a number of motions to go through here. Yes, Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that the 2022 operating budget in the amount of $27,892,305 is as detailed in Appendix A be approved.
Just.
Oh, yes, I read the wrong number. Excuse me.
Yeah. Give it again.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I move that we approve Appendix A, property taxes to be increased by $250,000 from $23,761,496 to $24,011,496.
Okay, we have a motion before us to approve Appendix A with the increases as indicated. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing not, call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Penner.
I'd like to move that council accept Appendix A, contribution to reserves, to increase by $250,000 from $7,085,463 to $7,335,463.
Okay, we have a motion before us to approve Appendix A, the contribution to reserves to be increased by the numbers shown. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Yes, Councillor Christie.
I'll move that Appendix B, contribution to reserves, be increased by $250,000 from $600,000 to $850,000.
Okay, we have a motion before us to approve Appendix B, contributions to reserve, the infrastructure side, be increased by the numbers indicated on the screens before us. Is there any discussion to that motion? I don't see any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. They just keep on coming, don't they? Deputy Reeve King.
So then I'd make the motion that council approve the 2022 operating budget in the amount of $28,142,305 as detailed in Appendix A.
Okay, we have a motion before us to approve the 2022 operating budget in the amounts detailed in front of us from Appendix A. Is there any discussion to that? Yes, go ahead, Mr. McKinnon. Okay. So that motion, that's a, well, it's a,
I'll amend my motion to make that change, so detailed in Appendix A as amended be approved.
all righty. Clear as mud? You assume we're going to get to the next motion, eh? All righty. Okay, so we have a motion that we approve 2022 operating budget in the amount of $28,142,305 as detailed in Appendix A as amended be approved. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing not, call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. So the next motion would read, okay, it's already there as amended. Great. Councillor Christie.
I'll move that the transfer from the reserve and contribution to reserve be as detailed in Appendix B as amended be approved.
All righty. We have a motion to approve the transfers from reserves and contributions to reserves as detailed in Appendix B as amended to be approved. Any discussion to that motion? See none, call the question. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Penner.
I'd make the motion that council approve the 2022 capital budget and funding sources in the amount of $5,230,332 as detailed in Appendix D.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the 2022 capital budget with funding and sources in the amounts described as detailed in Appendix D. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Deputy Reeve King.
I'll make the motion that council authorize the creation of an infrastructure reserve.
All right, we have a motion to approve to authorize the creation of an infrastructure reserve. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Penner.
I'd make the motion that we move, that the flat maintenance rate related to water connections be amended to $60 bi-monthly effective May 1st, 2022, and that the master rates by law be amended accordingly.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the flat maintenance rate, add an extra $5 a month. Well, the motion's there. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing not, call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor McGee.
I move that council receive for information the 2022 operating and capital report.
All righty, we have a motion to receive for information the 2022 operating and capital report. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. All those in favor? That is carried. Anybody want to make up another motion just for the heck of it while we're on a roll here? Okay, well, that brings us to the end of Mr. McKinnon's report. Okay, thank you, Mr. McKinnon.
Thank you, Council.
I'm just going to jump around in the agenda here a little bit. Our next agenda item would be 7.5, AUMA Energy Audit Proposed Project. Welcome, Mr. Frere. And anytime you're ready.
Okay, we have agenda item 7.5 here. AUMA Energy Audit Proposed Projects. Recommended motion is that council move to request administration to provide additional information for the proposed projects as presented. So the background on this, the AUMA in partnership with Train completed a preliminary energy audit for the administration building, family and community support services building, maintenance shop, Ron Gore Memorial Arena, and the Trochu Fire Hall in November of 2021. These findings were presented to council in January of 2022 by the AUMA, formerly the AUMA, now the AM, as information. Administration has identified some of the proposed projects in the audit as potentially beneficial in reducing utility costs and the maintenance required by facility staff for Kneehill County facilities. We are seeking guidance from council on whether we should proceed with further investigation on costing and potential partnerships with other municipalities, and to accept what is shown as information. Out of the 28 projects we have proposed, we have identified 4 as warranting further investigation. All 4 of these projects are building automation systems, or BAS for short, which would be located in the Family and Community Support Services building, the maintenance shop, the arena, and the Trochu Fire Hall. This building already having that installed. So just real quick overview of BAS systems and their benefits. Lowered utility costs from HVAC scheduling and lower demand when the building or parts of are unoccupied. Lower maintenance costs and longer life expectancy of equipment because of the lowered demand. Lowered facilities workload, less preventative maintenance and equipment failures. Higher occupancy comfort, and also directly reported alarms on equipment failures, smoke or CO2 detection, water detection. And this provides faster response times for facilities emergencies should they occur. We have also identified 4 solar PV projects to be recommended for future consideration outside of these 4. These projects would offset rising utility costs and pay for themselves over their lifespan of the system. We would also be able to act on them in conjunction with the BAS projects, should council wish. The remaining projects are not recommended for various reasons, detailed in the attached spreadsheet. So financial and staffing implications. Building automation systems range in cost from $15,000 to $40,000, depending on the scope and of control and the building complexity. If we decide to investigate further, the outcomes can be presented as 2023 capital projects. These projects could be eligible for grants depending on what's available at the time of commitment. They can also be financed in a variety of ways through the AUMA Train partnership. BAS can come with a hosting monitoring monthly cost depending on the type. An example of this is our administration building here has a yearly firmware and maintenance cost of $1,527. The staffing implications are reduced maintenance hours on equipment, reduction in workload, and a service level increase for facility users. The average energy consumption reduction and therefore life expectancy in HVAC systems with a BAS is 40%. So it's pretty substantial.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frere. Are there any questions from council to Mr. Frere? Mr. Hogan, you got something?
If there's no questions from council at this point, just to build on what Mr. Frere has said, is again highlighting that we'd be looking at this as potentially 2023 capital budget items. There's some more work and background that needs to go into here, as Mr. Frere indicated, in terms of cost, potential grant opportunities, things like that. What would happen more immediately, though, is this would be feedback to go back to the Kneehill Regional Partnership, because this was a group project that they had undertaken. The first phase of the project, which is the material that has been attached to your RFD, was the phase 1. That phase was free. As they're looking to, what they're looking to do now is to determine, all the municipalities that had a similar report, obviously the details of each report for each municipality is going to differ, to see if there is the desire on behalf of the regional municipalities to maybe lump some projects and go forward with something. We don't know what our neighbors are, what their decisions are made yet. We'll find out more at the Kneehill Regional Partnership on the 30th, but this would tie into that. And so we do more investigation internally, but the feedback we'd also give the Kneehill Regional Partnership is that out of all the stuff proposed for Kneehill County, it would be the BAS systems that we would be interested in looking at as part of a larger project. And so the work going into it is the same, and even if the partnership doesn't go forward with that project, as Jason indicated, there's still work on our end to say maybe the region doesn't have a large project to go forward with, but the county still might, and again, preparing that for future budgets and forecasts.
Are there any questions? Oh, yes, go ahead. Councillor
So,
Forbes.
after attending the RMA this past week, the solar, we sat in a discussion where the solar panels are really not, they're more reusable at this time than they are recyclable. So if we're going to move forward with putting these on some buildings, what is our long-term plan for recycling them at the end, when right now a lot of the material cannot be recycled?
If it can't be recycled, it can't be recycled. These solar projects aren't really our focus right now, but we are willing to go dig into them forward if you guys wish. But just further on that, like the life expectancy of a solar panel is 25 years. That's something else to be considered too.
Go ahead, Councillor
Sorry.
Forbes.
And I do understand that, because that is one of the things that they talked about at the RMA. But my concern would be is what we're doing with them when they're at the end of the life, right? Like, where are we putting them if they're not recyclable at this time?
Councillor Penner.
I hear what you're saying, and I like what you're saying, but I also like how, where Jason put them, that they're not looking at them right now, it's for future considerations. And I think it's to keep it on the radar that we need to look at that stuff. But right now, I really like what I see here, that's not the main, because there is a lot of ifs out there, or buts, so how, and so I do like your recommendation here for the VAS systems.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you. And yeah, I appreciate that you're doing the investigation, so that's really important, I think, before we go ahead and make any decisions. But one question that I've always had is, what was the cost to the solar project on the roof of the administration building? And what do we know concrete that we've saved in energy costs to this point?
Okay, so we have presented this information in the past, and I can certainly get detailed information from you guys quickly, but off the top of my head, that was about a $30,000 project. And the payoff time on that project, the calculations came out to 17 and a half years.
Go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
Yeah, thank you for that. I actually was just talking to a local expert, and he actually installed a commercial solar facility on his building, and he anticipated 15 to 17 years to recoup that cost. So I just think that's always something we have to be very mindful of.
I might also add to that there was definitely lessons learned in that installation to do with angles of panels and how we would go about. And I think that realistically, you can get those payoff numbers down to 12-year mark pretty reasonably.
I think the concern was when they went up, there was regulations that you're not allowed to go above a specific number, which has changed.
Yeah.
And through council, I think that's the administration understands that there's a lot more detail and business case to put together regarding solar. And that's why even though the solar recommendations came out of the report, why administration's recommending that they not be a priority right now, because there is a lot of work to go into determine the questions that are there here. If council is interested in more information regarding the panels on the building, as has been said, we've provided some of those before. We can update those and bring those back as a separate report at a later time, if that's something that council's desirous of. But for the item here today is what we're not recommending that at this time that we put a lot of effort into the solar, any of the solar initiatives that were put forward in the study. But this would keep them on the radar as something that as we progressed in time, that we'd in the future put together a business case or and weigh that case on its merits in order to make a recommendation.
As time progresses, technology progresses, there's going to be probably better initiatives someplace along the line. Were you, any supplemental questions, Councillor Cunningham?
Yeah, thank you. And not really necessarily pertaining to this conversation, I guess in a roundabout way, but I know at RMA we were discussing like the utility costs themselves necessarily aren't the problem, but what we're seeing, on farms and especially some rural businesses, the delivery cost. So I think that's something like for myself, I know I really want to advocate on because those delivery costs are getting like, hard for people to even manage, right? So, I think looking at some of these projects too, we want to see like, is it going to change any of that, right? It's not, right? It's the carbon tax. Like, unfortunately, that's a bigger fish for us to fry down the line.
Yeah, delivery and distribution charges have always been very substantial when you live out in the rural areas. Deputy Reeve King.
So I don't want us to lose sort of the thread a little bit here. This is a regional initiative, and if there's economies of scale that can be achieved and potential savings by partnering with our neighboring municipalities, I think that it is well worth our time to continue the investigation, especially into the BAS systems. Automating heating and whatever, lighting and all those things has, like you say, immediate potential for return. And the 40% number really is interesting. When we struggle to recycle a cardboard box, it's hard to think about recycling of solar panels and all those other challenges that are associated with it, right? And so I would be interested if our partnering municipalities again are interested, and if there's opportunities there for savings initially and potential shortening the term of cost recovery, I'm interested in hearing that information, but it's certainly not first priority. And I hear and understand the concern about the recycling of a lot of this green energy stuff. There is no really good end of life solutions, and so it really makes it hard when you're thinking green and all you're doing is pushing that potential environmental liability out 25 or 30 years. So I'd be very supportive of the initial building automation systems, and then certainly don't slam the door on the solar, but I hear that it's more in the background than so. So you definitely have my support in moving forward. There's an opportunity here for us to work with our neighbors.
Go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
One more, just promise. So I'm just curious about Train. Is it a Canadian-based company? Do they have a location in Canada? And if you were to go ahead with some of these projects, is it Train that completes the projects, or is it an outside company that does that?
That depends on how we decide to proceed. As Mike was saying, if we don't have regional buy-in, we might have a business case to proceed individually anyways. Train is a very, very large company. They've been, the MA put out an RFP basically to solicit a company to join with in this initiative, and Train is the company that won that.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Ferrer? If not, let's, yes, go ahead. Deputy Reeve King.
If there's not any other questions, I think it makes good sense for us to work with our neighbors, and if there's opportunities for savings, particularly on the initiatives that you're talking about, the 4 building automation systems, I'm very supportive of that. So I will make the motion that council request administration to provide additional information for the proposed projects as presented.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to request information to provide additional info. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Ferrer.
Thank you for squeezing me in.
Well, we know how important your job is. Okay, I take it lunch is not here, so we'll continue. Our next agenda item, 7.1, Policy 3-22. Mr. Hogan, you're presenting.
Yes, through council, we'll just get to the
Don't sound so thrilled.
appropriate page. The item that's before you is just part of the normal policy review that the county, that the county goes through. This particular policy has come up, and we're not recommending that there be any changes to it. Essentially, what this policy indicates is that once a member of council is no longer on council, that there's a waiting period before they're appointed to any of council's committees. And so it's just establishing that waiting period. And as said, we're not recommending that there be any meaningful or changes to the intent or the wording of the policy. But as part of that policy review, council adopting it will put that new date on it and demonstrate that it was reviewed as part of the normal process.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Hogan? I see none. What are council's wishes? Councillor McGee.
I move that we approve Policy 3-22, former elected official waiting period to serve as a member at large as presented.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to approve Policy 3-22 as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We're moving along now. 7.2, Royal Canadian Legion Service Recognition Book. Mr. Hogan.
Through Mr. Reeve, this item that's before you is regarding advertisement in a publication that the Royal Canadian Legion puts out each year. Each year they send out requests to municipalities, businesses, etc., to place ads of different size within the publication. That the ad payment generates revenue, also goes to help offset the cost of the book. This is an item that council has traditionally approved each year. Should council choose to do this, we do have areas in the budget that this funding could be taken from. With that in mind, we are suggesting that once again, as in years past, that council approve a sponsorship of the publication.
Are there any questions for Mr. Hogan? Yes, Councillor Christie.
The motion to continue providing support to the annual Alberta Northwest Territories Royal Canadian Legion Military Service Recognition Book with the purchase of a business card size advertisement at a cost of $315 with the funds coming from the 2022 operating budget.
Thank you. We have a motion before us as presented on screen. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay. Mr. Hogan, do you know who's presenting the next item, 7.3?
It's slated to be our communications officer, but I can start as she's,
Well, if we can let's skip over to 7.4.
I think she's about to walk in.
Uh-oh.
She's like, you're not skipping my item.
Darn, now I need a whiteout here. Okay. 7.3, Ratepayer Evening, welcome.
Thank you, Council. Some exciting news today. I'm bringing you back the Ratepayer Evenings that we annually held in, well, every year, but the last time we did it was 2019 because of COVID. So in February of 2020, Council approved the 2 Ratepayer events be held, one in Torrington and one in Carbon. However, due to those gathering restrictions, the events were canceled. Now that gathering restrictions have been lifted, administration can proceed with planning the Ratepayer events again for 2022. These events provide a family-friendly opportunity for residents and ratepayers to come and engage with council and staff, ask questions, and provide feedback. The facilitation is similar to a trade fair. Each department has their own booth with department-specific information. Refreshments, kids' activities, and prize draws will also be provided. So we're just seeking some direction from council for hosting these events in 2022. Some options: we could host one in Torrington. We could host 2 as originally planned, one in Torrington and one in Carbon. We could choose alternate locations. We are recommending that we have these events kind of early summer to avoid interfering with harvest. Ideally, going forward, we would like to host them in April. So hopefully that can happen in 2023. Just some new options for 2022. We're thinking of getting a food truck to provide the meal. Hiring catering does ensure some additional COVID-19 safety. We're going to provide opportunity for resident questions to be answered in our Ratepayer newsletter following the event. And we're also recommending that we change the name from Discovery Fair to Ratepayer Evening, just to avoid confusion with the Kneehill Regional FCSS's Discovery Nights. And we have $15,000 budgeted for these events in 2022, so $7,500 each. And I did attach just a brief communications plan just for your information as well.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Are there any questions from council? Suggestions? Yes, Councillor Forbes.
So it's more of a, if it's a ratepayer and we're doing for the kids as well, what kind of activities would they be participating in?
Through the Reeve, last time FCSS came with us to the fair and they were kind of in charge of the activities. So I think they were painting kindness rocks, right? And they just had kind of those kind of things kids could do.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. So this is a separate entity from the Discovery Nights, or is it still, like, I think there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah, sorry, through the Reeve, these were our Discovery, like this was our Discovery Fair that we held, and that was our Ratepayer Evening. So we're just thinking of changing the name to kind of clarify that it's for ratepayers, and it's not to be confused with the Discovery Nights that the FCSS holds.
Are there any other questions? Thoughts? Councillor Penner.
Just an early thought here. I think we should have 2 in the county, spread them out. We could try to continue that. Hopefully we're done with that. And so, yeah, I would really push for 2.
Councillor Deputy Reeve King.
So I guess one of the questions that maybe as a council we want to address is where we hold them, and do we hold them within our own communities as opposed to a neighboring municipality? So do we want to have our ratepayer nights in Torrington and instead of Carbon, perhaps Swallow, to, again, use our facilities? And not that I'm saying that we should stay out of our neighboring communities, but just perhaps a question for council to consider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever council wishes, we can make happen.
Whoa, that's a scary thought.
Okay, wait.
Councilor Penner?
I really like the idea. Do you feel that we can fit in, like I feel we can fit in our small communities? And being this year, you're talking about food trucks, and even though there's a good kitchen and everything there, but do you feel, you know, you've been in the Swalwell Hall, for instance, and you've seen our attendance in the past. Do you feel there would be an issue?
Through the Reeve, there is potential just because it is a smaller venue. We're really hoping to, through direct mail and through the website and social media, just to really get the invite out and hopefully have a bunch of ratepayers attend. So depending on how many numbers show up, that might be the only issue there.
I think it would be awesome if we could fill the hall. It would look great.
Yes.
You know, I would really love to see us use our buildings, our facilities that we support.
Councilor McGee?
I support what you're saying and see your point quite well, but I also have a bit of a concern that there'll be some in that corner of Division 1 that are less likely to go Swalwell as they would be to Carbon. I believe with the location of Carbon, the advantage would be is we're serving a broader area of people who are likely to travel over there than we might be otherwise that didn't come to the first one that we had. But again, I also think using our own facilities is a smarter thing to do, but I think we need to be very aware that that might change what populace comes.
Councilor Penner?
For this first one, I do hear what you're saying. It may be a good idea to host it in Carbon for that reason, to get people back attending them and realizing the valuable information that is on hand on those evenings and the staff that are there. So for sure, I see your point with using Carbon, and I'm not saying that in the future that we don't use Swalwell or Huxley or whoever, you know. But yeah, no, I do see your point.
So just a question, are we looking at bringing in our managers into this meeting to also provide the expert information that people may request?
Yes, Reed, that just like we did in 2019, we'll have all the subject matter experts will be at the meeting as well.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable, because as much as we know everything,
Yes.
we don't know the details. We don't know what we don't know. Okay, good way of putting it. Is there any other questions, thoughts? Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
I guess as I think about it, one of the advantages to our neighboring municipalities' facilities is they tend to be larger than some of the ones we find within our own hamlets. I would be interested in, as we hold these, just to kind of get a feel for urban versus rural attendance. Free meals bring out lots of people, and so if we're holding this, say, in Carbon, or if it happened to be in Trochu or Acme, wherever, do we draw that urban population who come for the meal and out of curiosity, or are we actually drawing our own ratepayers to get the information that pertains to, that they need regarding their own municipality? So and whether we do that informally or otherwise, it'd be very interesting to see when we are partnering or using a partner's facilities, so i.e. Carbon in this case, the majority of the people that come, are they from Carbon, or are they actually from the area that surrounds Carbon, our own ratepayers?
Through the Reeve, yeah, we can definitely kind of keep track of that. And it'll be good to compare it if we do Torrington as well, just to kind of see the numbers that arrive. But we are hoping with the direct mail right to the ratepayers that we will get more of them coming out.
So we'll keep it a secret from the urbans.
Yes, that's right.
Good luck. Councilor Penner?
I like what I'm hearing, so I'm going to put a motion on the floor. Happy to go ahead with these, that I would make the motion that council direct administration to organize 2 ratepayer evenings, one in Torrington and one in Carbon in 2022. I believe, do you want a date in there, or we don't need a date?
Through the Reeve, if you're okay with doing them in June, then we can try to find a date that works with everybody within that
We'll
month.
leave the date out, whatever you guys come up with, that will work, so.
Okay.
Yeah, there could be some technicalities with a food truck and all that kind of stuff, so.
Right.
Be awesome, but it would be nice to get back out there and connect with our ratepayers. Alrighty, so we have a motion before us, and I know it's there. 2 council meetings, ratepayer events, evenings in Torrington and 1 in Carbon. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Perfect. Thank you, Council.
Yep, let's hurry up and get this done before COVID hits again. Alrighty, our next agenda item is 7.4, Economic Development Conference. Mr. Hogan.
Through you, Mr. Reeve, this item is in front of you. This is in conjunction with council's policy around attending events. So this is an event put forward by Councillor Christie. This is in alignment with his appointment and role to Community Futures. But as even though it's in alignment, it does still fall under the portion of the policy that council would need to approve it, and that's the item that we're putting forward to you today. Our recommendation is that you approve it because it is aligned with Community Futures, and council does play an active role on that board.
Councillor Christie.
I'd just like to comment. The Economic Development Committee for Community Futures is just really getting going. I'm the chair of that committee. When I listened to the presentation of the RMA, I felt it might be advantageous and informative for me to go to that, to give more support to the Community Futures part of it. Part of that is we have a huge, maybe not a huge amount of money, but money that's not going out that needs to go out to small business, and we felt that any more information I can take down there, the better it would be.
Councillor McGee.
I fully support that, but I have a wrench to tell you about. Unless you're already registered, they only have online left. Okay, good. Just want to be sure we weren't having a discussion that wasn't necessary. So great, good to hear. So therefore, I'd like to make the motion that we direct administration, excuse me, wrong line again. Can't follow this board. That we approve Councillor Christie's attendance to the 2022 Economic Development Conference taking place in April 6th through 8th, 2022.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to approve attendance for Councillor Christie to the Economic Development Conference. Is there any discussion to that motion? Councillor Penner.
I just want to thank Councillor Christie for offering to go to this or making time to attend this, because economic development is part of our vision here and it's a major part of our vision. So thank you for making the time to attend this to represent ourselves plus the region.
Okay, if any other discussion to the motion? I see none. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Alrighty, we are getting close. I haven't heard anything happening behind us, so our next agenda item will be council and committee reports. And we have reports from Community Futures, Kneehill Housing, Kneehill FCSS, and RMA. Well, we'll get through this one and. Oh, shoot. I didn't write it down. I'll get it. Yeah. Well, we'll get through the council and committee reports and then we'll go back to 7.6. Which I wrote on the top of my page instead of writing it right after 7.5. Deputy Reeve King.
I'll just comment on the FCSS stuff. You've seen all of that in the past, and I gave you a more recent update not that long ago, and by next council meeting, you'll have another one. So those minutes are quite old, and there's more pertinent information coming, so.
Counselor Christie.
I guess, as I said before, Community Futures has funds. We're looking for business. So we got $4.5 million that's accessible to small business loans. With triple RF coming to a close, the focus now will be to small business loans. That somewhat hasn't been left behind, but expansion hasn't happened. Like new businesses haven't opened. So the triple RF funding was more to sustain the businesses that were there. Now we're looking for businesses that are startups. So.
Okay, and Counselor McGee, you asked RMA follow-up report?
Yeah, and I'd like to suggest that each of us make a point of speaking to something if you are so comfortable to do. I just think overall it was really worthwhile, and I really appreciate the opportunity for us all to go. I think being a full group as a team when we can be, or as much as we can be, really is a benefit as well, though all the information is very shareable, so if ever that's the way it has to be, that's fine too. Overall, though, I think our ratepayers would love to know that our Minister of Municipal Affairs treats us very well and is sure to hear us. I feel very heard by him, and I think this is a great avenue to be sure to be heard. So for me, that was a highlight for the value of it. I also think one of the values for our ratepayers is also how well we do go through our resolution process, and we have found some really good resolutions to advocate to the Alberta government on behalf of all rural municipalities, which include, looking at the veterinary issues, as well as having some responsive delivery agencies, and I forgot which one I was going to highlight. Just a minute. And taking a look at how the negative impact of carbon taxes on rural Albertans. I found those three particularly important to our ratepayers. So that's just a tidbit of the many, many good reasons to be there.
And I would agree with you. The opportunity to be together again was welcomed. It's scary. Everyone there aged except me. Okay, we all aged at the same level. But yeah, it was just listening to the speakers. It was just a great opportunity to get that perspective and the challenges and how to solve them. It's a great opportunity there. Yes, Councillor Forbes, sorry.
No, that's good. I really like the fact that the ministers come in and that the municipalities, the individuals get to go up and ask questions. I think it's really is the only way that the ratepayer has a voice is by their own councillor going up there and doing what they need to do to the ministers that are basically put on for everyone to see and to be accountable for what they're doing, and at least to hear that portion of it. I also love the breakout rooms because you don't always get to hear the things that go on in the recycling world. And so this was a really great opportunity to see things that we wouldn't normally hear on a regular basis as quickly.
Councillor Penner.
I think most things have been touched on. Furthermore, to your breakout sessions, 90 minutes isn't long enough sometimes when you really get into some, especially some of the really good ones. So, but I'm happy that they're there and they've allowed 90 minutes each time we go to do those sessions.
Yeah, I would like to echo the sentiments about the ministers being available to speak one-on-one. You get a really good perspective. They may not agree with you, but at least they give you their perspective. And you know where to lobby if you need to lobby, so. Councillor Christie.
One of the things that the breakout sessions does is, what do you call it, helps the networking with other municipalities to see what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, and we missed that, we better go see what they did. So that networking is terribly important.
Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, you guys stole all my points, but yeah, I don't think we have many opportunities. I think the second or the last day, what did we have, 10 ministers up on the forum? So yeah, so, you know, that's pretty rare to have that many ministers in one place. So yeah, a great opportunity for that. And just to echo what Councillor Christie said, just to be able to talk to other municipalities, know that like they have a lot of the same concerns that we do. And it's just interesting to see how other people are, you know, trying to solve their issues. and also just the ability to see Chris Cook, if nobody's been able to hear, if you haven't been able to hear him speak before. I've met him at a hockey game, but I've never heard him speak, and he's just phenomenal. So yeah, thanks for that.
Councillor Penner.
Just so our ratepayers know, when it comes to the ministerial forum, we do not submit our questions beforehand, so they are put on the spot when the questions are asked. So that part is, it's very good. Sometimes they skip around it, but mostly they vote back to it, and if they don't, someone else brings it back to them later on in the question.
Well, if there's nothing else, would someone like to make a motion to accept council and committee reports as presented? If you want to add to your Kneehill housing, please go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Reeve. I just wanted to add quickly that in addition to my report, I was able to attend a supper at the Golden Hills Lodge last night. They had a theme night, and it was called Peach and Peony Bistro. The lodge was just decorated so beautiful with flowers, and it was just amazing. We each had a table, like each board member or whoever was there in addition to the residents. We got to share tables with them, and one thing that I found really amazing was the members from the Three Hills RCMP were there, and they served as waiters and waitresses, and the residents really liked that. I think a couple of them were wondering what the police were doing there and should they be concerned, but it was just a wonderful night. Amazing food, desserts, appetizers, and yeah, so just, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to go and be there.
Okay. Well, I guess while we're giving reports, I actually had the great opportunity to meet with well, okay, we'll go back to last Friday. MP Martin Shields got a hold of me, asked if we would be interested in joining him at the Rosebud Theater. So in attendance, my wife and I were there. Martin Shields was there. Nathan Cooper was there with one of his daughters. Amber Link and her husband were there, Reeve of Wheatland County, and Reeve Jason Snyder from Vulcan County attended. We had a great opportunity to sit during the meal, talk, have a great opportunity to hear what's happening in the federal side, the provincial side, and within our municipalities. So, and then we attended the theater. Do believe it was New Blood. I didn't bring the brochure, but I think it's New Blood is what the. And that was great to see the students from Strathmore High School and the area around performing at this level at the Rosebud Theater. They did a wonderful job, and I think it was a 3-night stand that they were doing, and it's the first time that the Rosebud Theater has been opened since COVID. So they were happy to get back to operating. There was a lot of people. It was pretty much packed. There wasn't too many empty chairs left there, and it was people from all over. I spoke with a number of people, and they were all coming out of Calgary to come visit. So it was a great meal, great play, and a great opportunity to meet with the elected officials in the area. Oh, and I forgot, and the mayor and his wife, Matt and Darlene, and I forget the last name, from Arrowwood, the town of Arrowwood were there. So we had urban representation, and we also had rural. So I would recommend it if anybody wants to go see that. And if someone wants to make a motion to, yes, Deputy Reeve King.
I'll make the motion to accept council and committee reports as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to accept as presented. All those in favor? Carried unanimously, and we are breaking for lunch.
Just don't forget 7.6.
I got it written right down there with a big asterisk right now. Okay.
Sorry, Debbie.
We are now, all righty. Okay, I'll bring us back into session. Our next agenda item, 7.6, office closure. Mr. Hogan.
Hey, through Mr. Reeve, the item that's before us, as council is aware, we've talked about in the past, is administration is looking to have an all-staff day, which would essentially be a day for all county staff, would be conducting a number of corporate training initiatives. With that, what our hope is that we were able to close the county office for one day so that all staff would be able to participate in the event. Ultimately, that we can provide information, we can provide different training to our staff. We are looking at this as being a yearly event, and so obviously the topics would change from year to year, but it would be one day where we would bring everybody in, talk about what's going on at the county, the directions we're going, have everybody on the same page, as well as to provide external training opportunities that we would bring in for that day. So what we're looking for council's approval is for administration to move forward with the event, which would include closing down the county operations for one day. And so that would be a weekday in which the county office and shop were closed to facilitate the staff attendance. And then what we would do after this year is bring a policy back to council, basically so that council could, through policy, give authorization for us to do this each year rather than to continually bring an item back each year for it. But that is the main intent, is looking for council's authorization to close the office with the caveat, obviously, we would advertise that closure to the public in advance.
Okay, are there any questions from council to Mr. Hogan? I see none. Someone care to make, yes, Councillor McGee.
I really think this is a great way for administration to advance the professionalism here, and I really commend them on making this idea come forward. So I would like to move that council authorize administration to close county offices for one day to facilitate staff training, and that the closure be advertised in advance to the public.
Okay, we have a motion to authorize admin to close the county office for one day for staff training. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. We'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Well, just don't have fun at it. Okay, our next agenda item would be closed session. Follow-up action list. Oh, boy. Yes, follow-up action list. Any questions, concerns, comments? Anyone care to make a motion? Oh, Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, I will move, oh, Carolyn, you're back. That council receive for information the council follow-up action list as presented.
All right, we have a motion to receive for information, Councillor follow-up action list as presented. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing not, call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. All righty, now we have another closed session. It's under section 2.4, under FOIPP, advice from officials. Somebody want to move us in closed session? Yes, Councillor Forbes.
I will move us into closed session.
Okay, motion's been made.